Oh man. The Super Mario Bros. Movie from Illumination is finally here, and with how much I've talked about Nintendo and Mario in particular, it's about time I weigh in on this film. Not that film. After all, it seems like everyone has an opinion on this movie. Or so I predict. Yeah, I actually haven't seen the new movie yet. In fact, at the time of recording, it's not even in theaters. I can't review something I haven't experienced and know nothing about. What am I, a YouTuber? But in that case, I guess I need something else of relevance to talk about. I feel like Super Mario Bros. 1993 is best known nowadays as a punching bag for internet film critics. A quintessential bad movie if you don't actually watch movies and are just a fan of the works of Doug Walker. For some reason. And I've never really thought that was fair. Like, really? This is one of the worst movies ever made? I mean, just scrolling through the lowest rated films on a site like Rotten Tomatoes, or the works of Doug Walker, there is no way Mario is worse or even nearly as bad as these. How could it be worse than Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2? How? I don't even mean to say Super Mario Bros. 1993 is just more enjoyable in the tried and true so bad it's good sense. No. I think that if people saw this movie in a vacuum without knowledge of internet reviewers or even the Mario franchise, most would see it as, at the very least, a solid blockbuster, comparable to its contemporaries. But of course, nothing exists in a vacuum. And that's really what's influenced the perception of this movie since the beginning. The idea that Super Mario Bros. 1993 is one of the worst things ever created has little to do with the film in of itself, and everything to do with how it adapts the source material. Yet, ironically, that's a big part of why I've come around to appreciating this movie. Though we're getting way ahead of ourselves, it's high time I summarize Super Mario Bros. 1993. Mario and Luigi run a family plumbing business out of Brooklyn, but their mundane lives are interrupted when Daisy, a local archaeologist and Luigi's love interest, is kidnapped and yanked into a parallel dimension. Yes, the damsel in distress is Daisy, not Peach. Super Mario Land was a thing at the time, moving on. As it turns out, the dinosaurs weren't actually wiped out, but instead slipped away to this secret world where they evolved alongside humanity. President Koopa, the tyrannical ruler of this dystopian New York, wants his hands on Daisy because she's secretly a princess from the parallel dimension and holds the key to a full-scale invasion of the real world. So Mario and Luigi need to stop President Koopa and his forces in order to save Daisy and prevent their world from being overrun by Goombas. Not those Goombas, these Goombas. So, yeah, a little different from the games. Again, that's the major sticking point when people talk about this thing. That's what makes it so bad, as they say. The narrative and tone are so off from what you would expect from a Mario movie that the whole thing crashes hard. And it's not for a lack of source material. If we look at the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, that only really had these games to go off of. And it still holds up as faithful, at least compared to the movie. But by 1993, there was a ton to the Mario franchise. Super Mario World had been out for years. A plethora of artwork, comics, and animation had been created. The spin-offs had started up. Point is, there was certainly enough to pull from at this point that huge artistic liberties were not necessary. But they took them, and people hated it. However, looking back at it, I think that's why I like this movie so much. Don't get me wrong, as a comic book fan, I fully understand the pains of a bad or at least inaccurate adaptation. But with the benefit of hindsight, Super Mario Bros. 1993 doesn't carry that baggage. It didn't affect the mainstream outlook on the Mario franchise, nor did it fundamentally change the franchise itself. So now it can just sort of exist as its own self-contained take on these characters and this universe. And through that lens, this film is so much fun. I get such a kick out of the way it recontextualizes all the elements of the Mario universe to fit this new setting, aesthetic, and tone. Some may say that stuff is kind of sullied because, wow, the people behind this project didn't have faith in Super Mario as it was and twisted it into what they actually wanted to make. To that, I'd like to introduce the 1960s Batman series starring Adam West. The executive producer of that show outright despised comic books and saw them as mindless schlock. And that's what led him and the rest of the team to hone in on a colorful and campy tone. And you know, that only resulted in one of the most beloved pieces of superhero media even to this day. No biggie. Of course, the main reason that series is so beloved is that it did interesting and entertaining things with its changes from the source material. And I can honestly say the same for Super Mario Bros. I mentioned this before, but the narrative isn't anything crazy. Aside from the set dressing of dinosaur evolution and, you know, Super Mario, it's pretty standard, lighthearted action blockbuster fare. Especially for the time. Fun, but not some subversive masterpiece. Though if you were going into Super Mario Bros. Expecting experimental art house cinema, well. But what really makes this movie special is everything surrounding the writing. For example, the performances. And yeah, I know, from all accounts, the cast hated their experience with this film. It seems like all the main stars have had nothing good to say about their time on set. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo infamously drowned their sorrows during production. Yet, somehow, despite the fact that they were apparently frustrated and hurt and wasted, I can't help but love the energy of these guys in the movie. Honestly, I think this was perfect casting for the titular bros in live action. Well, second to the Super Show anyway. Hoskins is Mario. Leguizamo is Luigi. Together, not only are they very charismatic and likable, but they bounce off each other so well that despite how different this whole situation is from the games, when these two interact, I can't help but think, hey, those are the Mario brothers.
He's been my mother my whole life. Hey. All right, my father. He's been my father, my uncle, my brother, everybody.
It also helps that once you accept the absurdity of everything, the movie is genuinely funny. And if we're talking about humor, we've gotta mention Dennis Hopper as President Koopa. Sure, the first thing you notice about this version of Bowser is that he's very clearly inspired by that guy with legal troubles. But within that framework of the Koopa King as a sleazy billionaire, Hopper really does steal the show for a lot of the runtime. Like this whole scene where the bros are talking Koopa, but they don't know they're talking to him, and he's just going along with it.
That Koopa clown?
Yeah?
Is one evil, egg-sucking son of a snake. Did I lie?
You know, with how much humor comes from this character, I feel like it's a precursor to how Bowser has become the funniest character in a lot of the modern games. Speaking of which, can we briefly mention how this movie positioned Daisy as Luigi's love interest way before the Mario games started doing that? I know there was a bit of that in some of the manga already, but still, this reminds me of how the Super Show portrayed Luigi as an awkward scaredy cat before the games. Just watch, some part of Charlie Day's Luigi is gonna stick. It's tradition at this point. But I've been a little coy until now. When I most recently revisited Super Mario Bros., the big thing that stuck out to me wasn't the portrayal of the characters or the performances of the stars, it was the set design. Seriously, going in with only vague childhood memories and of course knowing of this movie's reputation, I was and still am blown away by the aesthetic of Dino Haddon, and the fact that so much of it is a real thing that the crew physically built. Granted, a lot of my admiration for that could come from how tired I am of this green screen CGI riddled wasteland we're in nowadays, but come on, look at this. You could cut through the atmosphere with a knife, and if you've seen my SMT video, you know how much of a sucker I am for that. And not only is the aesthetic and craftsmanship of all this great in its own right, but the sets and costumes carry cute and clever references to the games that really flesh out the world building. Enemies like Camera Bros and Ostro own various shops. The Womps, Bob-ombs, and Fireballs are all reinterpreted as weapons that perfectly fit into this world. The Shy Guys and Sniffets are in gas masks and cloaks. Mario and Koopa straight up face off on a bridge at the end of the movie. And all of these are just scratching the surface. Just just touching upon the ones I can easily point out without analyzing the film with a fine-tooth comb. With how they're implemented, they don't just feel like sly cameos for die-hard fans to notice. Everything from the major props and plot elements to the smallest details sell the idea that this isn't merely a dystopian cyberpunk setting somewhat inspired by the Mario franchise, but truly a dystopian cyberpunk take on the Mario universe. A reinterpretation that feels unique yet recognizable, fresh yet made with clear love for and attention towards the source material, and how it should be translated to this new context. And ultimately, that's what I love so much about Super Mario Bros. Beyond the wacky antics, the comedic performances, and the stellar craftsmanship, it's such a fun, unique twist on a fictional universe I adore. To draw one more comparison to superhero comics, I see this movie as a cool Elseworld take on Super Mario. A complete recontextualization of beloved characters, settings, and concepts that are different but get their appeal from those differences. For so long, the reason this movie was bashed to hell and back was all the departures it took from its source material. But damn it, if Superman Red Son, Spider-Man 2099, and Gotham by Gaslight can all be acclaimed, why can't Super Mario Bros.? Listen, if the Illumination movie is good, people are gonna say it's the first time they've gotten Mario right on the big screen. Not me though, because this got here first. And despite everything said about it, this movie's good too.